Good morning. So this is Corey here in Texas. It's a rainy Saturday morning. Not a whole lot going on, so I figured I would do something fun like building ACI routed connections to an external router or pair of routers in this case. So get into it, and also apologies, there will be background noise. There's dogs, there's kids, there's a whole lot of life going on around me as I do my fun stuff here. So let's get right to it. So as you can see on the slide, here's the lab that I am working with today. Down on the bottom is the ACI fabric. It's running one of the latest codes, 222i. I have 3 APICs, the controllers. I have 2 spines and 4 leafs. Today for the layer 3 external connections, I'm going to be using leafs 103 and 104, so leaf 3 and 4. And I'm going to be connecting to a pair of Nexus 7000s, and I'm going to do that via a 4-way equal cost multipath link, meaning all 4 links will be routed with dedicated interfaces, so no sub-interfaces, no SVIs. It'll all be routed links today. So what I plan on doing is, first, I'm going to step through the access policy. So I've already built the access policy, but I'll show you how I built it. And this is kind of the order that I put it in. And then once we step through those pieces, I will start with the tenant build. Now, as you can see, this does not look complete. So pardon me if during the build I pause because I will be writing my notes so I could make this a little bit more descriptive. As you can see, I'm kind of stopped right there. I know what to do. I just don't know the correct order off the top of my head. But as we go through this together, we will definitely figure it out. So let's take a look at the lab. So in the lab, I have 2 Nexus 7000s. Let's see if I can get these ports near each other here. So as you can see here, I have ports. Let's go back up a little bit. So 11 and 12 connect my Nexus 7000 together. So these are routed layer 3 links connecting these 2 guys together. Everybody's running in area 228, which also is 740. I just kind of made those names the same. Then on 7K1, I have a connection to leaf 103 and a connection to leaf 104, and the same on the other. So if we go out there right now and we do a show CDP neighbor, I should still see the neighbors on these guys because I built the access policies already. So I do see them on links 15 and 17, and over here on 14 and 16. But if I do a show IP OSPF neighbor, my neighbor relationship is only between my 2 core 7000s. So show IP OSPF neighbor. There we go. So with that, give me a minute. What I will do is I will switch over to my GUI, and we will get started with the other piece of this. Okay, we're back here recording again. Took a little extra pause to get a little bit of coffee. So you should be seeing my lab right now, or the GUI for the ACI. Earlier I showed you that there was Nexus 7000. I have pretty much everything configured on that end. All the IP addresses, OSPF is stood up. Inside of here, I will be creating a new tenant for this. So as you can see inside of here, I'll be creating a tenant layer 3 EXP. Don't see that in here. What we want to do first is go back into the access policies. I'm going to show you the access policies I built earlier. And I'll do them in the order that I built. So first off, I built a VLAN pool, and that's the pool of VLANs that you're going to utilize for those particular links. In this case, I did a layer 3 EXP VLAN pool. I gave it a range of 10 VLANs. Now, in this case, because I'm doing routed links, I'm really not using any of the VLANs, but in case I ever want to expand this OSPF domain or include like SVI links over a trunk, I've just kind of allocated those for later so I don't have to worry about finding them or making the policy that controls them. I take this VLAN pool and I associate it to a physical domain. In this case, it's going to be an external routed domain, and it will be right here. I connect the VLAN pool into this, and in the next step, as I did my build, then I have to go and build my AAEP, which is up here under Global Policies, and it is Attachable Access Entity Profile. So this is essentially where your different domains are going to connect together to make your tenant or to make your fabric. So if you want to connect multiple domains together, this is kind of the glue point for them. Inside of here, I created a new one, a layer 3, layer 2 EXP AAEP. And in here, this is where I connected to that domain, and that domain connected to the VLAN. So that stitches together the domain policies. Once I'm done with that, I'm going to create an interface policy and profile, and then a switch interface policy and profile, and then I will be done. So over here is switch policies. Here's just some general policies for, actually, let me backtrack. I'm going to do the interface policies first. So just like creating port profiles on a Nexus switch, you have a bunch of settings that you want to associate with ports, CDP, LLDP, what are some different things that you want to do if I want to do port channeling, setting these policies in here. Now, I group these policies together to do something meaningful with them. So inside of here, I created a leaf policy group, or interface policy group, I should say, right here, that takes the values that I've set up here and I build those into something that I want to do. Because here I'm not doing a trunk. It's going to be basically an access or a routed interface. Really, the only thing I've done in here is I've set CDP and LLDP to enable, and then I attached it to that AAEP. So that kind of glues these pieces together. Then I go down here, I'm actually going to assign this policy group to some ports. Inside of here, I'm going to go down to my Leaf profiles under Interface Profiles, and I'm going to assign ports, and in this case, I took ports 13 through 16. I have not identified these to any particular switch. These are just ports that are going to be part of my profile that later on I'm going to attach to a switch. So in here, I created this, and I put these ports, 13 through 16, and I associated them to the policy group I created up here, okay? So next, I'm going to go up, and I'm going to open up switch policies. And the same thing in here. I have a bunch of policies that I assigned to my switch. In here, I've left all these as default, and I'm going to group all those up into a policy group. Inside of here, you'll see it all is set to default, so pretty boring setting. And then I'm going to attach this policy group to specific switches. So inside of here, I created this Layer 3 EXP Switch Leaf Profile. And inside of here is where I glue everything together. So I have blocks 103 and 104 attached to this Leaf Interface Profile, which is the ports that I specified inside my interface policies. So I believe that was 13 through 16. So once all that's done, now I've done the policies that I need to create everything. So the policies are created. And in fact, once you do that and I say, hey, I want these leaves on these ports to have CDP, this is when you can go back, and I don't think I'm sharing the screen, but that's when you can go back to your Nexus 7000, do a CDP neighbor, and those guys should show up. Now, you're not going to have any IP addresses yet, so you're not going to be able to do any pings, and you're also not going to be able to do any OSPF neighbor relationships because none of that has been built. So now we're going to go into the tenant build. So in here, I don't have the tenant built, so I'm going to create a new tenant. I'm going to name this, and I'm going to put on caps locks just because I want to do everything in caps. Layer 3, EXP. Actually, this will be layer 2, layer 3, because later on I'm going to do some layer 2 trunks as well. EXP, for example, and we'll just leave it at that. Inside of here, for right now, I'm going to leave all these as their defaults. It's going to take me to the tenant when I'm finished. So give it a second. Now it's created the tenant. And it opened me up. It actually took me to the networking tab. So that's pretty neat. I didn't think it normally does that. So what I'm going to do next, and I'm going to do my notes at the same time, is I'm going to create my external routed network. So create a new one. I've right-clicked on that and clicked on there, and I'm going to give it a name, and I'm going to copy this name from somewhere else because I gave it a pretty long name just to make it nice and descriptive in the same time. Save time. I'll put this in here. So basically, layer 3 EXP, 7K BDC. Those are my backup domains. External routed domain, or you can call it network. Actually, you know what? I'm going to change that to external routed network. Yeah, I like that better. Network. And we're just going to work our way down through here. So I'm just going to go left to right. The first thing I'm going to grab onto is I'm going to want to do OSPF. I'm going to make it a regular area. In here, I'm doing area ID of 740. You can do it as 740, or you can put it into notation of IP format. Either way, it'll transcribe itself the same inside the system. I'm going to leave the area cost by default. Next step is I'm going to create a VRF. Remember, this is a new tenant, and again, every tenant requires a VRF, and a VRF is what you put all your bridge domains, endpoint groups, everything has to go into a VRF. So as you can see, I have no VRF created here for this domain or for this tenant, so I'm going to create a new one, and I'm going to call it L2L3 EXP VRF. So really original naming. Going to keep all these as their defaults. Now next step in here is I'm going to tie this back. So back when we did our physical domains and the access policies, here's external routed domain. So I'm going to go and find the one that I just created, this one, and this is what ties the tenant routed domain to the access policies that I created earlier. Okay, let me make sure I'm keeping up on my notes. I am. Okay. Next step is we are going to create a node and interface. So we're going to do the nodes first. So create a node profile or interface profile. Sorry about that. I'm typing my notes as we go through here. So I'm going to click Add. I'm going to give it a name, and we will call it, let's call it L3EXP node profile. How about that? And let's put it all back in caps. L3EXP node profile. There. Inside of here, so now these are where I'm going to tie the physical nodes into my OSPF policy I've created here. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to go to leaf 3. And again, this is OSPF, so I want to assign it a router ID. And inside of here, I name this 191.168.254.33. It's going to also create a loopback interface with that same address because I have this checked. I'm doing both nodes 103 and 104, so let's go ahead and do 104 here as well. And his loopback address and his ID is going to be 192.168.254.34. Okay. Now I'm going to assign the OSPF interface profiles. Hold on one second. I'm going to write my notes here. OSPF interface profile. And those are going to be the 4 ports or 4 interfaces that actually connect to the 7K. All right, let's get to it. So this is going to take just a little bit of time, just because it's going to be 4 IP addresses that I'm going to be creating here. And I'm going to call this L3, let's see, EXP, interface profile. I'm going to leave all these as their defaults. I'm going to keep this checked, even though, just so I can show you guys. So the next screen is anything you might do particular to this OSPF area. If you want to do authentication or something else, or configure HSRP on these interfaces. For this, I wouldn't be doing it, but maybe for some kind of other static addressing, I could do that here. So nothing on this page. The next one, this is where we're going to do a little bit of typing. So I'm going to have 4 routed interfaces that are going to connect back up into my Nexus 7000s. So the first one is going to be leaf 3, port 13. And it's going to be 191.168.254. I made a bunch of /30s for point-to-point links, and this one in particular is going to be .14. Something to note with OSPF, MTU is important when negotiating with the neighbors, and right now the 7000 is set to 1500 bytes, where the Nexus 9000 or the ACI ports are set to 9000. So somewhere you need to make a change. So in here, I'm going to make the change on all these interfaces in ACI to correspond to the Nexus 7000s. So I set that to 1500 bytes. I'm going to do this 3 more times. So I'm going to do all 4 of my interfaces inside of here. So I will try and move along here. So there's 14. That's going to be 191.1. Again, setting the MTU for OSPF. 2 more to go. Now I'm going to switch over to leaf 104 or leaf 4 in this pod, and I'm going to be using port 15. There's going to be 191. So it's that 30 /30. Again, 1500 for my bytes. Okay, 1 more to go. Leaf 4, this is going to connect to 7K2, which is port 16, I believe. And that is going to be 191.168.254.18/30. Again, we'll do 1500 here. And before I hit OK, let's just make sure I didn't do anything wrong here. 14, 26, 30, and 18. All right, that looks pretty good. All right, we will move along. We'll hit OK here. We're moving right along. So we did our nodes. We did our interface profile. Hit OK here. And now that is done, I'm going to hit Next. And here I'm going to define my external EPG. So endpoint group, and in here I'm going to define what networks I'm allowing to pass through this EPG. So we'll just give this a name of, let's see, L3. Let's call it L3 external EPG. And then inside of here, I'm going to leave all these default, and I'm going to add just a basic subnet of zeros. Zeros. So basically, not going to really do any control at this point. I'm just trying to get the circuit up. And if everything went well at this point, I should be done. So let's go in here and just see what is happening. So here's what I just created. And it's slowly coming up. Let's see, logical nodes. There's the logical nodes that I created. So if we go in here, you see I have my loopbacks on my logical nodes. Let's expand this out. I'm going to go to node 103, look at OSPF, and see if I have interfaces yet. I do. I have my loopback set. I have 13 and 14. They're set as DR, so that means that they are enabled. And OSPF must be running. So here we do interface count. We look at our neighbor relationships, and sure enough, we have 2 neighbor relationships. So this on leaf 103 is going to 7K1 and 7K2. Looks like we're correctly passing information. So if we go down to our route information, yep, we should have routes passing. And at this point, everything's looking really good. I wonder why that's at 0. Should be okay. Oh, well, resolution failed, but actually it is green, so it's actually correcting itself. So it's still coming up. And everything looks good at this point. Let's go into our Nexus 7000s. And let's see what's going on over here. And actually, I need to show you this, don't I? Let's see. Share. Let's see if I open this up so you can see what I'm doing here. There we go. So if we go out to our Nexus 7000, I'm going to do a show IP OSPF neighbor, and I should have full adjacencies. Show IP route. And here's some routes coming in. If we look for my /32s, there's 33 and 34. So those are the loopback coming off of OSPF 740, and those are the loopbacks coming off of ACI. So at this point, I have successfully built my OSPF network. So other things you can do inside of here is you can look at OSPF in these directly, or you can go look at the links directly. So if I went to went into my pod itself, let's go to leaf 3, interface, and I created these as physical interfaces. I go down to 13 and let that come up. And then I go to the operational statistics of that. It's going to show me all the information going on this switch from a physical layer. So it's not going to talk much about actual OSPF metrics, but it's going to show me all that information. Now, if I did want to see more about OSPF on this particular leaf, I could shrink that and I could go into protocols, and I could go into my OSPF protocols here. Excuse me. Oh yes, OSPF protocols here, and I could also start looking at the links and the information that's going on inside of here. So there's multiple ways that I can get to this information. And again, you can also do this all via the fabric as well. So if you SSH into the fabric, the command structure is slightly different, but if you go into the CLI of the APIC, just type in fabric and the fabric name or the leaf name. So in this case it would be leaf 3, I would do fabric, leaf 3, or the number 103, and then show IP OSPF neighbors, and I can see my relationships there. Now there's a few extra commands you need to put at the end of it because it is VRF based, so you need to add VRF, and if you have a small network, just do VRF all. So that is it. So hopefully that was informative. What I want to do next is come in here and create kind of the same video, except this time I want to do some layer 2 trunking to the Nexus 7000s, and I'll either do those where the layer 2 trunk is part of the EPG, so you don't have to do contracts, or I'll do an external bridge connection, and in that case I'll have an inside and an outside to my layer 2 VLANs, so I will have to put a contract in there. So I guess that's it. Happy weekend to everybody, or weekend to me by the time you watch this. Who knows when it'll be. But take care. Thanks.